You guys know the drill. I need your favorite plays at the following positions for tonight's small 3-game NBA slate. Small. Let's start with guard. Who are you going to be going with, Nick?
I'm going to go with Steph Curry tonight in the game against Brooklyn. I know he is the most expensive player there, but this is where I think you have to pay up tonight. I know there are some options at forward as well. And I know we got two teams that are very efficient on both ends of the floor. Look, I like James Harden in this game too for maybe a different reason that we'll talk about a little bit later. But when I look at Curry, he's getting obviously a ton of 3-pointers up. We know that he's not shy about hoisting them up. But just the biggest difference with him and Harden and George too. I mean, you have with Harden, he's taken 66 more 3-pointers than Harden this season, and he's done 60 more times than Paul George. And those are going to add up over time when you look at their fantasy point output averages on the season. You can see that it's made a big difference. And I know Curry averages a little less rebounds and assists per game than Harden, but Harden also gets a lot of turnovers too. So I think Curry is going to be the best bang for your buck tonight. Where you have quite a few expensive players, you're going to have to go with one of them.
Kenny, which guard is the best bang for your buck?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Reggie Jackson at $6,100. This is his lowest price in 6 games, and this is a guy that you know is going to shoot the basketball. Nick just liked to talk about Steph Curry doesn't shy away from threes. How about Reggie Jackson not taking fewer than 16 shots in his last 8 games? He's played 34 or more in 6 of his last 8, so the minutes should be there. The Spurs, probably the worst defense on the slate. These are a bunch of great defenses playing tonight, a lot of low totals. But I think that Reggie Jackson ultimately in a pace-up game, both of these teams top 7 in pace. I think the minutes should be there, the shots should be there, probably the best defense to target. I think all the boxes are checked here. And I'm going to fire up Reggie Jackson. I'm going to take the discount at $6,100. All
right, Garion, who are you going to fire up at guard?
Yeah, I'm actually going to split the difference between those two guys. And I think something Kenny said towards the end there is really important. These are low total games. These are good defenses. I think we're probably looking at a lot more floor performances than ceiling performances. So I'm going to hunt floor. And I think one of the best floor players in the entire NBA is Donovan Mitchell. He is $8,600 tonight. Across his last 8 games, he's averaging 47 DraftKings points per contest. He's got a usage rate above 35%. Within that span of time, and $8,600 is the lowest price tag we have gotten Donovan Mitchell at so far this season. So if you're going to get a couple $100 discount, again, I don't think he's someone who can match Steph Curry's ceiling, but I think he really does have one of the safest floors. So I'll go with Donovan Mitchell against the 76ers.
All right, so take me then to forward as we beef up the department here. Kenny.
I'm going to go with Tobias Harris at $8,500. I think that he is also a pretty high floor option. And look, I know that everyone probably fears the Utah Jazz defense, right? They have a great pedigree. They're one of the best last year. They've had some great performances this year. The Utah Jazz defense has been really bad in the last 5 games. And really, in particular, where they've been bad is in the lane. They've been terrible defending inside. Rudy Gobert has not stepped up. And look, Tobias Harris is a guy that's played a ton of minutes. He had a giant usage rate last time out. 36% against Indiana, where he had over 51 DraftKings fantasy points. Without Joel Embiid in the lineup, I think it's pretty clear that they want to get the ball into Tobias Harris's hands. And I think that if he drives inside or decides to post up, as he likes to do as well, he shouldn't meet too much resistance, in terms of the Jazz interior defense, the way they've been playing the last 5 games. Of course, something crazy could happen and the Jazz could just revert back to being a great defense. But if you want to play the trends, you want to play the defense that we've seen over the last 2 weeks for the Utah Jazz, I think Tobias Harris is a really good option at $8,500. I just think you're going to get a lot of minutes, a lot of usage, and he's maybe going to have a decent matchup here. And also, Utah is not going to be a team that a lot of people want to go target, especially with a high-priced option. So maybe you also get a little bit lower ownership on Tobias Harris. I think that's a pretty good spot to play.
All right, Garbert, how about you, man? Forward, you like?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in the 5K and 6K tiers with the Clippers. Kenny mentioned Reggie Jackson. I think Eric Bledsoe is a pretty good play as well. And then you've got Nick Batum, who's sitting right there at $5,000. He's not scoring nearly as much as he did to begin November. He was averaging 16.8 points per game across his first 5 starts in the month. But he's still playing a ton of minutes. He's had 35 minutes, 37 minutes in 2 of his last 3 games. He's someone who, if you remove a very outlier box score against the Timberwolves, it's a game he only played 19 minutes because it just got incredibly lopsided. If you take that game away, he's averaging over 30 DraftKings points per game so far in November. So at $5,000, I just think it's a really, really low price to pay for, again, someone who's not a ceiling player, but someone who is a floor player. And the other thing to note about this particular grouping is if Terrence Mann doesn't play in this game, he's questionable right now with an ankle issue. That's probably a few extra possessions for each one of those guys on the Clippers that I already named. So I think Batum is someone who could really pay off that price tag tonight.
All right, Nick, who would you build around at forward? You have 6 games to choose from on this slate.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the Philly-Utah game. And I know with Philly, when you're looking at defensive efficiency, they're 22nd in the league right now in that category. So I want to get a little piece of that. And I know Garion was talking about Donovan Mitchell a little bit beforehand. And I do think that is a fair pick. But there's a reason why his price tag has dropped a little bit. I want to go with a guy who's shown a little bit of something recently. I know, we're talking 5K range. It's a little bit of flux. I'm going to go with Bojan Bogdanovic tonight, though. Coming off a game where he hoisted up 13 3-pointers, fourth 20-point game of the season. So I want to get a little bit of that, a little bit of savings. And at a time where, the Jazz scores, their efficiency is a little bit in flux all across the board. And I know Bogdanovic isn't necessarily an exception to that. But when I'm seeing him get a little bit extra volume recently, especially from 3, where again those makes are gonna add up from a fantasy perspective. I'm gonna go with him tonight against a team that's not quite as efficient defensively.
All right, Gary, and let's talk centers. Joel Embiid was the highest priced guy at 10,100. He's out. So Andre Drummond, the next guy up at 8,700. Are you gonna pay up at center?
I mean, if you're looking to pay up at center, it's essentially a decision between Gobert and Drummond. And I think for me, I would just rather save the $1,000 and go with Rudy Gobert. Drummond probably has a little higher ceiling. At least he's flashed a higher ceiling so far this season. But I think it's important to note that he was at his most dominant when Tobias Harris was also in the NBA's health and safety protocols. Since Harris has come back and he's kind of touted this massive 34-35% usage rate, Drummond's production is tapered off. It's only a 2-game sample, but it's a pretty noticeable trend. So I think Gobert for $1,000 less. Also, you think about this direct matchup. I mean, Gobert is the much better individual defender. I just think that he can take advantage of Drummond more than Drummond can take advantage of him. So I'll save the money and just go with Gobert.
All right, are you going to save money at center, Nick?
I think that there are some other options that you can go with tonight, but I'm with Gary on this one. You got to go with Rudy Gobert, especially with Drummond. The price is not, it's not worth it. Spend that extra grand in this game. And when you look at the times they've played each other over the past few years too, 5 of the last 7 games, Gobert has had more rebounds. 4 of the last 7 times that they've met up, Gobert has scored more points too. And again, when you're talking about defense, it's not even close when it's Drummond versus Gobert. But again, with the 76ers in general, not as efficient defensively too. So I think here it's worth paying up for Gobert. And I think with Drummond, if Harris was still out, that might make a difference. But either way, in the end, the savings is too much. And but Gobert will give you something at least in the end.
All right, Kenny, your pick for center.
I'm actually going to talk about this in a sec, but over the last 5 games, I mentioned the Utah Jazz defense is really bad. They've actually allowed over 70% shooting inside the restricted area. I'm a little worried about fading both of these guys, but I'm also incredibly worried about Rudy Gobert's defense inside against Andre Drummond. I know it's a crazy thing to say. I actually do like Andre Drummond. The problem is $8,700 is a really high price to pay for him. His prices just continue to come up to the point where now it's like maybe he hits 5x salary. I'm just going to go ahead and save the money. I'm going to go with Thad Young at $5,300. He's hit 6x value in 4 of his last 6 games. Sorry for throwing the producers a curveball there, but he's played at least 23.5 minutes in 5 straight games. The matchup is not the best, right? But we know that he's talented. We know that he can score the basketball. And he's just been one of the most consistent performers on this slate in terms of minutes that he's getting and fantasy output. I just think, in general, if he has the ball in his hands, he's on the floor for 27, 28 minutes, he should be able to get you 20, 25 fantasy points. And I think that's really all you can really ask for at this position.
All right, let's go to value, shall we? We want to save everybody out there watching some cash here. Nick, hook us up.
So there are 2 guys that really stand out to me tonight, one in the Utah game and one in the Golden State game, but on the opposite sides of the sideline. So I'm going with George Niang at 4.1K versus Utah. I know we're talking about Tobias Harris and him coming back, and of course he is going to give you more upside. Obviously, it's probably more expensive, and he has cut into George Niang's minutes a little bit, and then of course his usage and everything. But this is, one of those revenge games we talk about all the time with the NBA. So for George Niang, he was with that team for the last 4 years. He's shown the Sixers a lot. He's still getting, right around like 25 minutes of games with them, with Tobias Harris back. So I'm going to go with him because I think that, again, with that little price tag at 4.1K, you can get something out of him in this game. And then the other one too is Patty Mills real quickly. I mean, with Joe Harris out tonight, Patty Mills just hoisted up 12 3-pointers the other night and obviously had a good night. I think this is a guy at 3.8K you got to take a flyer on, get some exposure to.
All right, Kenny, how about a value play for your building block?
I'm taking a shot on Doug McDermott at $3,600. Both these teams top 7 in pace, and while the Clippers defense is really good, they're second in defensive efficiency. They've been middle of the road against the three, around 34% shooting for opponents. I think that ultimately McDermott here is a great flyer. You know, he could hit a few threes, 3 or 4 threes in a pace-up game. I think that this could hit. Also, I love the Bledsoe, Eric Bledsoe, $5,200. Gary mentioned him earlier, but I think that that's an incredible value play. He's been so consistent. And he's gotten the usage, especially in the last 2 games. He's seen a lot of minutes and a lot of usage. So I like him as well.
All right, if you're going to build around a value play, Garion, who would you choose?
Yeah, they've both already been mentioned, but I think Patty Mills is kind of one end of the spectrum and Doug McDermott is sort of the other end of the spectrum. Mills is going to be chalky just because everyone saw him get 9 3-pointers in the absence of Joe Harris. Not that there's anything wrong with that. This is a small slate. You might not even have to worry all that much about chalk. But Mills is going to be popular, I think rightfully so, and I will have some exposure to him, especially if he's going to play more than 30 minutes in this game. But McDermott's really interesting because you have this trio of Spurs wings priced below $5,000. I think a lot of people are going to trend towards Vassell, who's been fantastic lately and has been getting the most minutes of that sort of like McDermott, Lonnie Walker caliber of player. But McDermott's also probably locked into somewhere between 25 to 30 minutes, and he has the potential, as Kenny mentioned, to really just hit 4 or 5 3-pointers. So I think McDermott might be a value play with a lot less ownership, especially directly compared to someone like Patty Mills.
All right, good stuff. Let's talk about Slate Approved. What is your favorite bet on the DK Sportsbook tonight? Kenny, what is it?
It's going to be Sixers plus 9.5. I touched on the issues that the Jazz have inside. Over 70% shooting for opponents in the restricted area. Terrible rebound in the basketball. I think Tobias Harris and Andre Drummond can really do some damage to a defense that's been really bad lately. And I think this could be a close game.
Gary, and your favorite bet, what is it?
Yeah, I'm going to take advantage of some of these prop specials we have for this Nets Golden State Warriors game. I'm going to go Harden over 25 points, over 10 assists at plus 425. Obviously, that's something in terms of the scoring that Harden's only done 3 times so far this season, but 2 of those times have come in his last 5 games. He's looking a little bit more comfortable as he's sort of rounding into shape. Keyword rounding. And I also just think that this is going to be a close game. I mean, if you look at just the box scores of the Nets' recent games, they're either winning or losing by 25 points. I think this contest stays close. I think Harden plays his full allotment of minutes, and he'll just get over those 25 points. I really don't think there's any concern about him getting 10 assists. So at plus 425, I think there's some nice value here.
All right, Nick, where are you going for your favorite bet?
I'm absolutely in lockstep with Gary on this one. I was actually looking at it from just the points assist combo at 31.5, but I think you're going to get that much better value going with the special that Gary was talking about. With Harris out, there's going to be shots on the table, and as much as I think Patty Mills is going to benefit from that, I think Harden's going to do the same as well, and also he's going to still be dishing out a ton of assists. So I think 31.5 assists points combo is a safer way to go, but I think bang for your buck, you got to go with what Gary is saying here for the 25 points and 10 assists.